Bienvenue à tous. Welcome to Reporters here on France 24. In this edition, the peace talks in Doha aimed at ending almost 2 decades of war in Afghanistan. Our reporter is Shoaib Walla. This continual conflict is wrecking Afghanistan's potential. There's no doubt about that. And one wonders if there's any genuine progress to be made. Shoaib, you filmed this report. You had access to the Taliban. I'm wondering, how easy is it to get access to these people?
Well, it is quite difficult in Afghanistan, being a foreigner, to get access to Taliban-controlled areas. But what we did for this report was we actually went through a local journalist who was our fixer, and he was actually able to get us in touch with a few elders of a village in the eastern province of Nangarhar. In this village, there were 6 ex-Taliban fighters who had returned from the prison. So what we did was we went to this village and we met with the elders, and they actually allowed us to film one of the senior Taliban fighters in that village. So one thing that was quite surprising for us was actually the fact that how open these Taliban fighters were in communicating to us. They openly spoke about their ideology, about what they thought for the future of Afghanistan, and they gave us a rare glimpse in their lives.
Sazib, thank you very much indeed. Without further ado, let's take a look at our special report by Shazib Walla, Sonia Ghazali, Solen Shalvaron and Margot Ben.
Ahmedabad Kala is a small village hidden in the mountains of eastern Afghanistan. Almas Muslim was once a Taliban fighter. He spent 4 years in jail and was recently freed thanks to an amnesty program. Today, instead of a gun, he wields a watering hose in his garden.
Here are the orange trees. Over there are the olive trees. And on the side, you can see the guava trees. I take care of the garden and the plants and spend time with my children. I don't have any other activity. I don't have a job or a business.
Almas Muslim spent 15 years fighting Afghan and foreign troops.
Pass me some water.
His children have barely known their father. He spent much of their childhood far away on the front line.
Here, take this. I was in prison when I learned that my wife had given birth to a little girl. When I finally came home, my daughter refused to come towards me. We were strangers to one another. I never regretted joining the Taliban movement. I was let out of jail thanks to the efforts of our leaders. The government never did anything for us. I'm still in touch with our Taliban chiefs. They told us that, for the time being, we should spend time with our families.
Almas Muslim rarely leaves his home. He says he's afraid of the Afghan branch of the Islamic State group. The faction has suffered severe losses in the past year at the hands of the Taliban, American forces, and the Afghan army. For this unit of the Afghan army, the Taliban remain the #1 threat.
Attention!
Commander Sherzad and his men were called in as reinforcements after a patrol was ambushed in a nearby district.
Are you ready to do your duty? All is well at your end?
The operation is underway.
The commander is only 21 years old and joined the army 6 months ago.
In Nazian right now, there is fighting between the Taliban and police. The situation is extremely tense. Taliban fighters have laid landmines, which makes traveling very difficult. The war will go on until there is a peace agreement. The Taliban will not stop fighting. That's why they have the upper hand at the negotiating table. They will keep fighting until they get what they want.
According to various studies, the Taliban exert control or influence over more than 60% of the country. Today, Almas Muslim has a meeting a few meters away from his house.
Assalamu alaikum, dear esteemed fighter.
These men are his former comrades in arms, jailed Taliban members who, like him, benefited from a government amnesty.
Allahu Akbar. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
None of the members of this group believes their fighting days are over.
How did prison go for you? Did you have any problems?
I have psychological issues now. My health declined in prison because the soldiers would torture me.
And now I'm anxious because I can't find a job.
My experience in prison has only reinforced my faith in Islam. Before, I fought with a gun, but now I'm ready to use bombs to kill our enemies. I witnessed firsthand the tyranny of the Afghan government acting on American orders. Our Emir ordered us to lead a normal life for now. If Islamic law is not applied, we may resume fighting. For 20 years, we've been fighting for Sharia in our country. We will never accept man's law.
We will stand against those behaviours of women which are against the teachings of Islam. Half of a man's duties belong to his wife. Muslim women must wear a veil. If a woman wished to run a hotel or any other business, she must do so through a male relative who will be her intermediary. A woman cannot run a shop herself. Islam imposes certain limits on women.
According to security sources, dozens of Taliban fighters who were released from prison thanks to the amnesty program have already returned to the battlefield. The vibrant streets of Kabul. The Afghan capital has been transformed since the fall of the Taliban regime in 2001. In some neighborhoods, modern life has blossomed, and women like Raihana are models of emancipation. At 25, she intends to become the spokesperson for the civilian victims of the war.
Salam, salam, how are you? We are a network of relatives of civilian victims of the conflict. Some of our members have lost a family member in an attack or an explosion claimed by Daesh or the Taliban. Others' relatives were killed by governmental or foreign forces.
We want a representative of the victims of war to have a role in the peace process, because those who are sitting at the negotiating table have never suffered in their flesh. They've never lost a loved one because of the conflict.
I think we should organize a march so that people will get to know us.
Yes, we should.
Great, but we should avoid doing it in the street. We could be targeted by an attack.
We regularly receive threats. For instance, a Taliban prisoner who was recently let out of jail by the government has been threatening one of our members.
Hello, is everything going well? Mustafa, bring the menu.
Many women feel forgotten by those organizing the peace process, especially those who dare to flaunt their freedom, like Mina Rezai.
We are very afraid of what this peace process might lead to. For the past 20 years, we have been fighting for our rights. They say peace is coming. But what kind of peace do they mean? Is everything ready? Oh, the fire's gone out.
Mina opened this cafe 3 years ago.
When we hear people say that the Taliban want to make peace with us, I think that's wrong. For years they fought for their ideas. If you believe they're going to stand in front of me and accept me as I am today, you're wrong. That's why I'm so afraid. We've worked so hard over the past 20 years to create change in Afghanistan. When they'll come, what will happen? Will I be allowed to walk in the streets, to work, to study, to wear my favorite dress just like today? Can they really be okay with that? I don't think so.
The walls of Kabul are scarred by 40 years of war. And every person here has a terrible story to tell. Raihana shares her story as widely as possible. She lost her sister 2 years ago. Atifa, 14, was shot in the heart by a policeman. She was standing in front of her school when a protest turned violent.
My mother washed my little sister's body before the funeral. She was crying the whole time. As I was the one who always used to brush Atifa's hair, my mother put a comb in my hand and said, "You can't wash her, so you'll brush her hair." As I did, my sister looked so calm. I couldn't sense any life in her body. I didn't want to accept what had happened. When I kissed her forehead, it was so cold.
First, I would like to pay tribute to all of the relatives of victims of the Afghan conflict. The Taliban and the government are talking to each other, but there can only be peace if there is justice. All these criminals should be brought to justice. I'm not saying all these freed prisoners should be killed, but they should ask for forgiveness.
Each week, Raihana visits her sister's grave. Atifa is buried at the top of this hill, nicknamed Martyrs' Hill. Those who are buried here are mostly victims of the Taliban or the Islamic State group.
Each time I visit my sister's grave, I feel her strength. My heart is stronger thanks to her. I feel that she's here with me and sees me and hears me. Today, I want to tell her about the progress we've made with the committee. I want her to know that things are going smoothly, that we're going to try to have a role in the peace process. I imagine that one day this cemetery will become green and beautiful. We'll grow flowers everywhere. Afghanistan will be developed and peace will come. We'll have a normal life. We won't be scared anymore in the streets. We'll be free. We will keep studying and everyone will move on.
More than at any other time in the past 40 years, peace seems within reach in Afghanistan. But to achieve that settlement could still require many more sacrifices.
Our reporter Shazaib is still with us. Thank you so much for that insight into what's happening there. I'm wondering how far away the demands of the Taliban are from what the government is willing to do. And as we saw in your report, there are some Taliban who are all ready to take up arms again.
Well, that is true. According to security sources in Afghanistan, dozens of Taliban have already returned to the battlefield. And the main reason for this is actually the poverty that these guys are facing. If you see their villages and the areas that they belong to, they are very far-flung and poor areas, and there are no economic activities there. And on the other hand, the government has actually not given any rehabilitation programs for these Taliban, for these ex-Taliban fighters. There is also a question on the fact of the transparency in this prisoner release program, and we actually met with the head of the Independent Human Rights Commission in Afghanistan, Shehzad Akbar, and this is what she had to say.
The fact that both sides declined to share the information publicly with the public raises a lot of questions about these people. Well, were they held? Were they all held legally? You know, what were the kind of allegations? Was there anyone held on charges of crimes against humanity or war crimes? So the message that it sends is people do not deserve to know the truth, which is a terrible message about a very important national process.
We have the International Criminal Court right now looking at trying to perhaps prosecute certain American soldiers for war crimes. I'm wondering where you are, where you've been. Is there any sense that there is anything positive in the legacy that the Americans have left?
There is a main concern. There is a main concern between the delegations that are sitting in Doha and talking right now is how to actually reconcile, because both of them actually represent different parts of different segments of the Afghan society. The Taliban, they represent they have a very ultra-conservative Islamic vision for the future of Afghanistan, and the government, they want a democratic system in Afghanistan. So both of these countries will actually have to compromise. Both of these negotiation teams will have to compromise a lot. For now, the government is the one that has compromised the most. They have released 5,000 of Taliban prisoners and lost most of their leverage on the Taliban. On the other hand, the Taliban, their main leverage is violence, and they have not given it up yet. So for now, the government would actually be looking towards the Taliban to make some compromises, which looks a bit hard, because from the look of it, the Taliban, it looks like the Taliban have an upper hand in these negotiations.
Shahzad Wallah, thank you very much indeed. Thanks to your team as well for a fascinating report. You, of course, can see it again via our website, france24.com. This is Reporters on France 24. Stay with us, but most of all, do stay safe.